working on our trestle table, and we're ready to attach our leg to one piece of our foot. We're going to have a stepped foot so that our thickness changes. And you can see here we've already cut our tenon on our trestle, and this is going to get drawboard in, so I've got to do that later, but I'm working on my mortise here. You can do this a bunch of different ways. You can do it with a router, you can do it all by hand with a chisel. If you have a mortising machine, you can use that. We don't have those things, so we're going to do it with a drill press to hog out the majority of the waste, and then we'll chisel that to fit on our tenon. So this one's done. I've got the drill press set up here with our depth, what we need it to be. So you can see we're going almost all the way through this. We've got our fence set. I rolled it over here so we've got dust collection also. And in this case, and my son was just asking me, it doesn't matter that the fence is not parallel to the table, or perpendicular rather, because all we're trying to reference is the distance from there to there. And it doesn't matter if this table is straight, or the fence rather is straight or not, because that distance doesn't change no matter where we slide that down. And so I'm going to go through here and make a series of holes. I'm going to start with the first and last hole, because if you look at this one, I didn't, and that last hole is hard to drill, so that hole is angled because there's nothing for the bit to reference. I don't care if that is angled somewhere down in here, it'll be easier to clean up than it is on the end. So I'm going to set my outer holes first, and then I'm going to go through and drill the rest of it. Raising the handle to clear the bit out, it will run cooler, you'll get a better cut, and it's less friction as you drive that in because you're clearing out the waste. I'm fixing to start chiseling this waste out to establish my mortise dimension. So the first thing I did is took a marking wheel and mark it so that I've got a groove for my chisel to fit in. So now I don't have to guess where that line is. I've already established the cut. And the ends, I'm not concerned about. We want this wider than our tenon so that that has room to expand and contract. So I'm going to start by establishing my end, and I'm just doing that with a chisel. I didn't mark it with a knife. And I'm going to establish my end point, and then I'm going to go over here, find my marking wheel line, and establish this corner. And with the bevel facing toward the waist, we can get a good square corner here. And I'm only going to chisel out a couple inches here at the end so that I can check my fit before I do the whole thing. That went good. Right here we can see I'm a little loose at the top, but then as I get in there, it's getting tight. So I'm gonna try to be a little more careful the rest of the way down at the top to not be as wide, and then we'll get this chiseled the rest of the way out, and then we'll do a test fit. At this point, we've got our mortise cut, and we've got our tenon on our leg. So after we use the drill press to drill all those holes, we chiseled it out until it fit. And when you're doing that, you can either work on the mortise or the tenon to get a good fit. I've got my center lines marked. So as I go through and do this, I can get everything lined up on that center line, and then we've got a good tight fit here, front and back. And then we'll mark our center and two outside holes here to draw bore that, and we'll draw bore it together. So now I'm doing the same thing for the top. The top piece is wider and thicker, but it's the same concept. We're going to make a mortise to fit that tenon, and then we'll get the top brace on, and then the leg will be almost complete. Alright, so here we are now ready to cut our foot shape on the bandsaw. Again, you could do this a bunch of different ways with whatever tools you have. We have a really big bandsaw, so we're going to use it for this. We're going to cut the shape here and out of there. So I've got my pencil lines drawn. We're going to fire up this 30-year-old bandsaw. Makes a lot of racket on startup, and then we're going to get the cut.
Try not to break that in.
All right, here we are with an update on the table. We've got our legs together. So what we did after we mortised the top and bottom of our leg, we got a mortise in our tenon cut and sized. Before I put it together, I made sure to round over anything that needed that, because we can't get to it once it's together. So those need to be done on the router table by hand before we get to this point. Otherwise, you're gonna have a really hard time getting into that corner. So this is all rounded over, nearly complete. Our stretcher mortise is cut. That's a through mortise, so this will come through and get pegged. And I've still got to work on that, but these draw bores are now in. So the way a draw bore works is you've got two holes that are off centered, and when you draw that peg in or drive the peg in, it lines those holes up. So you get a really tight joint here. And if you want to come look at this, we can see how tight that is where we draw board the tenon on the end of the trestle into this piece. So we've got a really tight joint there. And you can see a little gap there where I didn't get it perfectly. But these draw bores are physically pulling those two pieces of wood together. So now our legs are together and complete. And those will be the two legs of our table. The next thing I've got to do is make our stretcher here, and I've got it cut to length, but I've got to cut my tenons on the end to fit through our through mortise here. And that's going to give us a knockdown table, so this can be taken apart in the event you move houses or need to move it or something like that. So that'll be the next step, is working on that. And then we've got to make a top brace to connect the two pieces, and then the table will just about be done. So one of the details we want to show is right here. So when we're on our router, there's a round bearing, so when that bearing comes around here, it leaves a round cut there. And that's one of the ways that you can tell it was done with the router. So what we like to do is actually go in and clean that cut up so it's a square cut. So this now is a sharp point, and it's not rounded like it was left by the router, but that's one of those little detail areas that can really set you apart from other manufacturers or people in the craft, especially if you're selling these things, because that's a detail that kind of sticks out. It just looks crisp, it looks really nice, and we like to clean that up so that we get that finished look and not the routed curve there.